It started with a rumor I never asked for. By the third day of the conference, every whisper around the office already had me and Ethan locked in some secret romance I didn't even know existed. The absurd part, no matter how many times I tried to laugh it off, I couldn't stop noticing the way he looked at me when he thought I wasn't paying attention. We were in New York for 2 weeks, shoved into the kind of work trip where time zones blur and the hotel feels more like a prison than a perk. Ethan had always been the golden boy of our Chicago branch, charming, sharp, ridiculously put together in ways that made people trust him instantly. I was his opposite, a little rough around the edges, sarcastic, the guy who kept to himself unless forced otherwise. And yet, Fader, maybe our company's sadistic HR team, decided we needed to share not just project responsibilities, but practically every waking moment together. Meetings all morning, networking dinners at night, late hours back at the hotel ironing out presentations. That's how it began. The subtle closeness no rumor mill could have imagined. The kind of tension that hangs in the air like static electricity before a storm. On our 4th night, after a brutal 12-hour workday, we stumbled into the hotel lounge. He ordered bourbon. I stuck with beer. It should have been routine, just 2 colleagues decompressing. But then Ethan leaned in, close enough that the scent of cedarwood and whiskey filled my lungs, and said, "Do you ever get tired of pretending?" The question hit me like a punch. Pretending what? I asked, though my voice betrayed the crack of nerves. That this is just work, he said quietly, his eyes searching mine as though waiting for permission to step over an invisible line. I laughed it off too harsh, too defensive. You've been listening to the rumor mill. He didn't laugh. His lips pressed into a thin line, his gaze unwavering. And that was the first time I realized maybe everyone else saw something I was too stubborn or too afraid to admit. The following days were a tug-of-war I couldn't escape. We moved through crowded hotel ballrooms, smiling politely at clients. But underneath it all my pulse quickened whenever his arm brushed mine. We stayed up past midnight fine-tuning slides, and I found myself memorizing the way he chewed on his pen cap when he was deep in thought. I told myself it was nothing. Just exhaustion. Just proximity. Just Ethan being Ethan. But then came the night the storm broke. The city outside our hotel room windows was drenched in rain. Neon lights bleeding across wet glass. We were too tired to go out for dinner, so Ethan suggested room service. He sprawled across the bed in his undershirt while we ate greasy burgers. And it was the most unguarded I had ever seen him. "You ever think," he asked between bites, "that maybe you've been running from something your whole life?" I stared at him. "What makes you say that?" "You get this look sometimes. Like you're halfway here and halfway somewhere else. Like if someone reached out, you'd bolt." It was terrifying how accurate he was. And for a long, heavy moment, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the muted patter of rain against the window. Then Ethan set his plate aside, leaned forward, and touched my wrist barely a brush, like he was afraid of shattering whatever fragile piece existed between us. His eyes softened, vulnerability spilling out where charm usually lived. "I don't want to be just another rumor, you know," he whispered. My breath caught. The weight of unspoken feelings, the fear of being seen too clearly, pressed down on me. For years I had built walls so high that no one got in. And now, sitting in a dimly lit hotel room with him, I felt those walls cracking. But I pulled away. I masked it with a laugh, shaking my head like he'd said something ridiculous. "Ethan, come on. We've got a presentation at 8 tomorrow. Don't make this into something it's not." The flicker of hurt in his eyes gutted me. He leaned back slowly, as though I just slammed a door in his face. "Right?" he said. His voice clipped. "Just work." The silence after that was deafening. I didn't sleep much that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face, the way his smile faltered, the way his shoulders stiffened when I shut him out. And maybe the cruelest part was realizing that, for the first time in years, I wanted something more than the safety of being alone. I wanted him, but by morning, it was too late. Ethan was colder, more distant. At breakfast, he buried himself in emails. During meetings, he addressed me formally, like I was just another coworker. The easy banter we'd built was gone, replaced with walls of his own. And the rumors, they only grew louder. Colleagues teased us. Strangers at the conference joked about us being inseparable. But every laugh cut deeper now, because I knew how close I'd come to letting it be true. That night, standing alone on the hotel rooftop, I finally admitted what I couldn't in the room with him. I wanted him. I wanted the risk, the vulnerability, the terrifying possibility of us. And yet, I had no idea if I still had the chance. I didn't see Ethan for most of the next day. He buried himself in breakout sessions and networking tables, orbiting the same space but never quite within reach. Every time I caught his eye, he looked away. It was punishment I'd earned, but still it stung like hell. By evening, the conference wrapped with a gala dinner in one of those cavernous ballrooms that smelled of polished wood and champagne. Everyone was dressed sharp, laughter bouncing off chandeliers. But all I could think about was the empty seat next to me where Ethan should have been. Halfway through the evening, I found him on the balcony, cigarette in hand despite the hotel's no-smoking signs. The city sprawled behind him, alive with neon and noise, but his shoulders looked heavy, his usual confidence stripped away. "You planning to freeze me out for the rest of the trip?" I asked softly. He didn't turn, just exhaled smoke and said, "Why should it matter? You made it clear you don't want this to be anything." I stepped closer. The wind tugged at his shirt, carrying the scent of tobacco and cologne. I never said I didn't want it. I admitted. My voice trembled more than I wanted it to. I just didn't know how to. That got his attention. He glanced at me, eyes narrowing. "So what? You do want me, but you'd rather I keep guessing. Keep feeling like an idiot every time I try to reach you." The words cut because they were true. I had let my fear make a liar out of me. "No," I whispered. "I don't want you guessing. I don't want you thinking you're just some rumor. I want you to know you're the first person in years who's made me want to stop running." For a moment, neither of us moved. Then Ethan dropped the cigarette, crushed it under his shoe, and closed the distance between us in 3 strides. "You're infuriating," he muttered, and then his mouth was on mine. The kiss was sharp at first, desperate. Years of unspoken things crashing into one fragile moment. I clutched his shirt like I was afraid he'd vanish, and he kissed me like he'd been waiting his whole life for me to get out of my own way. When we finally broke apart, breathless, he rested his forehead against mine. "You don't get to shut me out again," he warned. "If we're doing this, we're doing it all the way." I nodded, the city lights blurring behind him. All the way. But real love doesn't slip neatly into place just because 2 people finally confess. The next morning, reality returned with emails, phone calls, and an endless line of coworkers who still treated our closeness like gossip fodder. Every joke about us being the conference couple felt like a spotlight we weren't ready for. Ethan handled it better than I did. He smiled, deflected, carried on like nothing fazed him. but I could see the tension in his jaw. The way his hand twitched like he wanted to reach for mine and didn't dare. That night, back in our hotel room, I cracked under the pressure. Maybe we should cool it until we're home. I blurted, instantly regretting the words. His face fell. Cool it. I just meant his place. All the rumors. The attention, it's too much. We need to be careful. Careful. He repeated flatly. You mean invisible? I mean smart. I argued. Do you want everyone knowing? He stared at me for a long, painful moment, then shook his head with a bitter laugh. You don't get it, do you? I don't care what they know. I just care if you're proud enough to stand next to me when they find out. The silence that followed was unbearable. Ethan grabbed his jacket and walked out, leaving me with nothing but the echo of his words. The next 2 days dragged like years. We kept things professional, polite, distant. Killed me. Every laugh he shared with someone else felt like a knife twisting deeper. It wasn't until the final night, when our project won an award at the closing ceremony, that everything cracked open again. We were ushered on stage together. Smiles plastered on our faces as cameras flashed. And in that moment, standing under the lights, his shoulder brushing mine, I realized what I'd been too afraid to say. When we stepped off stage, adrenaline pumping, I grabbed his hand. Not discreetly. Not in the shadows. Right there. In front of colleagues and strangers alike. He froze, eyes wide. What are you doing? I squeezed his hand tighter. Not hiding, I said. His expression softened. Anger melting into something dangerously close to hope. Slowly, almost cautiously, he laced his fingers through mine. The world around us blurred into nothing. Later, when the crowd thinned and we slipped onto the quiet rooftop one last time, Ethan turned to me with a smile that felt like sunrise after a long storm. You're really terrible at this, he teased. At what? Letting someone love you. I laughed, raw and shaky. Good thing you're stubborn enough to keep trying. He kissed me then, softer than the first time. The kind of kiss that promised beginnings instead of battles. And for once, I didn't run. When the trip ended and we boarded the plane back to Chicago, people still whispered, still speculated. But for the first time, I didn't care. Ethan's hand rested on mine as we took off, steady and sure. And I knew the answer to the question everyone had been asking. Yes, he had fallen for me. And somewhere along the way, I had fallen for him too. And that despite the rumors, the fears, the chaos was the only truth that mattered. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated with the latest videos.